Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Hands on SAP Dev with me, Q Macro, DJ. It's Friday, 29th of January, and we're live. I've got my coffee with my Hands on SAP Dev mug. Oh, I forgot. It's quite dark, isn't it? I've forgotten to turn my... there we go. My ring light on. Yeah, a bit chaotic this morning because I made the coffee late. I forgot to get my biscuit. My shortbread biscuit, and yeah, having a few issues with the App Studio about 5 minutes ago. I need to check what's going on with that. I've reached out to the team, but it doesn't matter. We can work around that. That's no problem at all. So good morning, Jodel. Good morning, Pangaj. Good morning, Helmut in Hannover. Moin moin. Good morning, Shad. Good morning, Tanmoy as well. A very good morning to you too. So yeah, so this is episode 2, I suppose. Yeah, episode 2 on our exploration of the developer Keynote repository. So what we're going to do today is continue where we left off in the previous episode, which wasn't last week, it was the week before. In the previous episode, we set everything up. Our developer space, our developer environment, and a few tools. And now we're going to start looking at the message bus. Now I'll bring up the diagram in a minute on the screen, but basically that's where we've got to. Anybody also at the same place as me? I hope so. So yeah. Now I am bright and shining. Yes, on the outside. Maybe on the inside I'm still dull and have no idea what I'm doing. But let's see how this goes. So let me switch to the main scene, which is always better, really. I've got here. Let me just go here. I've got here a little diagram. Let's sort of orient ourselves. Orientate ourselves is also valid, I suppose. Around what we're going to be looking at today. Good morning, Ivona. Good morning. Nice to see you. And good morning, Ronnie. And good morning, Robin. So great to have you all on board. So let's see where we got to. I have, by the way, let me go back to here. Where are we? There we go. Developer Keynote. This is my fork of the SAP Samples Developer Keynote. As you can see here, forked. I just forked it again because, you know, why not? And we're at 40, we're at 93 forks. I'm not sure we can see that. I'll just drag that over there. We're at 93 forks. If anybody's not forked the SAP Samples, where are we here? Yeah. SAP Samples TechEd Developer Keynote, please do so, because that would be awesome. There we go, 93 forks. That's quite cool. As you can see here, I'm stopping my dev space, but the stopping of the dev space, after sort of cleaning things up, it's taking a very, very long time. Worst case scenario, we'll do things in the cockpit. We're going to do something in the cockpit anyway, and also on the old command line here. So I've made sure I've got everything ready. I've got a nice little. Let's just add that. Bit better. There we go. Oh, how's that for a command line? There we go. Yeah, that's better. So yeah, what we're going to do is I'm going to go back to my fork here. I'm going to change that to Q Macro. Gong. Let me just minimize that and then just have full screen. And let's jump to the quick start, which we were following in the previous episode. Okay. We set up our cloud platform trial account. Now, does anybody know what I should be saying? You know, given the announcement this week, of course, we have this wonderful Rise with SAP event on Wednesday, and as part of that event, Jürgen Müller, our CTO, explained that we're transitioning away from the brand cloud platform because it's a little bit confusing, and moving towards this this idea of the business technology platform, which is wider than cloud platform itself, you know, the specific cloud platform things that we know and love. Nothing is going away from a technology point of view, from an infrastructure point of view, from things we work with point of view. Nothing is changing, nothing is going away. So basically, rather than go through and change all this in the repo, which would be quite confusing, I'm going to keep the repo as it is, but I'm going to try and say business technology platform. Okay, so I want you to pick me up. If I say cloud platform, let me know, and I'll correct myself. And yeah, we want to be thinking about this as a as a business technology platform context. Okay, so basically the stuff that we're going to be creating from now on, where we might have written cloud platform, we're going to be writing business technology platform. But I think it's fair to say that, you know, existing content, you know, some may change, but, you know, blog posts, maybe things like this may stay the same, you know, historic. Helmut, SAP's #1 company in changing product names. No comment, Helmut, no comment. But yeah, we're all in this together, so we can all learn from each other. And yes, please correct me if I say cloud platform. So what we did in the previous episode is set up our trial account. We made sure we got access to the Business API Hub. In fact, I've just realised that I can never remember which way around it is. Is it the Business API Hub or the API Business Hub? I think it's the API Business Hub, isn't it? api.sap.com. The API Business Hub. So I'll change it. In fact, I'll change that right now. No, I won't. I won't make you watch me make the fix there. Yeah, maybe I should remember it as AB, alphabetical order, the API Business Hub. So that's my mistake. We forked this repository to our own account, and we went through the whole forking process, and hopefully we understand from the previous thing, from the previous episode, how to update our forks. So that's all good. Since the previous episode, I've made a couple of extra changes, and I've brought, obviously those are now in my fork because I've just recreated my fork here. I spoke to Kevin, who did the converter component, and we've now added that as the next step. And then of course we'll add the charity component and the UI component here. So I'll speak to Rich and to Marius. But anyway, that's what we did. And then we went into the App Studio and set up our dev space. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to do the set up the message bus. Okay, so this is the section here. Note that this is a separate directory within the repo, TechEd 2020, Developer Keynote, message bus. And for those regulars on Hands-on SAP Dev, you know, we have gone through you know, quite a bit of message bus, SAP enterprise message service stuff. So I think there's still room for us to go through it again. Let's treat this as a little bit of a refresher, okay? And let's just enjoy sort of kicking the tires again. Okay? So because I want to make sure that everybody is on the same page, and of course the newcomers as well. I want to make sure that you're happy with the message bus and the setup thereof. So let me bring up the diagram here. Let me just check the chat here. Dennis, good morning to you. Nice to see you, Dennis. Helmut, Ronnie. I always wondered about HANA Cloud Platform because I thought you are not forced to use HANA. Yes, HANA Cloud Platform. We moved away from that. So there we go. Yes. Don't ask me about names. What do I know? What do I know about anything? Not very much. So if you saw the keynote, the developer keynote at SAP TechEd last month, yeah, you will note that, you know, we did this whole thing was an extension scenario. We're extending the functionality of our S4 HANA Cloud system, right? And we were extending it using different components. And one of the really important components that integrates everything together, to integrate all these different components, is the message bus. Okay, so we're doing a bit of extension and integration at the same time, which is awesome. So the message bus here highlighted is the thing that we're going to be connecting: the charity component, the brain component, the emitter, all these different things. We're going to integrate all these things together in an asynchronous fashion. Okay, so going through here, this is the description that you should be. And in fact, let me just see if I can do this. Actually, let me go across to here, and hopefully my script is working again. I can send chat messages. There we go, to the chat from here. If anybody wants to have a look how we did that, how I did that set up with various sort of YouTube API command line things that I've written here in Bash shell, let me know. We can do that as well. And so that's what we're looking at right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up an instance of the SAP Enterprise Messaging Service. We're going to set it up. First of all, I mean, basically, as you can see here, right, there's different ways to set it. We're going to set it up in the cockpit, or rather, you can set it up in the cockpit, and you can set it up on the command line. And when you're on the command line, you can set it up manually or use a script. So we've got plenty of time in this hour, in this episode. So let's just do it all so that we can actually relate things that are in the cockpit to the command line and vice versa. And then we'll also, if we've got time, we'll jump to the cloud messaging hands-on SAP dev repo, where we've got some scripts that sort of help us kick the tires and understand a little bit more about the message bus. Okay, so might be a bit of rough sea in the short run though. Yeah, I mean, change is we know change is constant, and change is usually good. Not always, but usually. But yeah, change is what keeps us alive and keeps us sort of thinking and learning. So let me just check actually. Oh yeah, I've got a C. Where we go? I keep pressing the wrong button here. It might be related to my specific account. So let me just check. Where are we? Let's just restart this thing here, relaunch there, and also bring in my Brave browser. There. What's going on? Why is that not working? It's all gone crazy. There we go. Right, perfect. So it's still stopping. Let me just refresh that, because if we can use the dev space, let me delete it. We could do that, couldn't we? It won't take very long. If we can use the dev space, then let's use dev space. Let's create one now while I'm talking. Dev space hands on SAP dev cloud business application. Let's create that dev space. Let's see if it gets created. Did you lose me there, or was it part of the show? I think I'm still there. I did press this secret. And switch to the secret and then back again. So hopefully that was what you saw, Jadel. Yeah, I'm going to keep going. So that is starting. So let's leave that there. Now we can set things up in the cockpit. Okay, so let's see that. We can create both the service instance and the service key using features of the SAP Business Technology Platform cockpit. Okay, so why don't we go there? Okay, let's go to my trial home, and in the cockpit, let's just refresh just to make sure I'm still authenticated. Okay, that's what we saw. Brilliant. Okay, well, it worked then, sort of. So in the cockpit here, you can see right now, here's my trial account that I'm using for this. It's one of those ones that I can sort of delete and remove all trace and everything, so that it doesn't matter that we're sharing these sort of trial account IDs and everything. So I've got nothing in the applications in my dev space, or nothing, no service instances. So what we'll do is we'll go through here. So for those of you not familiar, we can find the enterprise messaging service in the service marketplace, and go find that, and we'll see what plans are available, and then we'll start creating an instance. Okay, and we'll talk about what these things are. Let me just grab this thing here, and we'll go back here, and where are we? In the service marketplace, which is coming up shortly, we can search for our enterprise messaging service, and there it is. We can see that it's a service on Cloud Foundry, in the Cloud Foundry environment, and we can see that to us with a trial account here, we have a plan available. Now, those of you, some of you already will have noticed this, and we've talked about this in the past. This dev plan, in the description, it says it's deprecated. It's not going to go away anytime soon, as I've been told, which is great. It is for non-productive use, but it allows us to explore all the features. It's not restricting us to anything. So it allows us to explore all the features that we need to use, right? So we'll use this service plan here. and we'll create an instance. Okay, this feels very foreign to me, using the cockpit, using a GUI to create things. As you saw from a tweet maybe yesterday, that I was going through this, and for the first time I even noticed this: choose a CLI friendly name for your service instance. I think Ronnie, you noticed that, said that, right? Right. Thanks, Janelle. I didn't realise, and Ronnie, I didn't realise that my microphone wasn't in the secret screen. So I'll add that in OBS. That's interesting. Cool. Okay, thank you. So I'll add that. Remind me at the end to add the microphone. I completely forgot that. So I was talking to you the whole time when I was typing in these things. Anyway, so enterprise messaging, service plan dev, Cloud Foundry runtime environment, dev space, and we'll choose a CLI friendly name for your service instance, which is quite nice. So I'm going to call it emdev, because why not? Because it's a nice short name. Okay, and I'm going to go through next, because what we want to do is we want to specify some instance parameters, and those are the things here that we saw in the description on this particular README. Now, what are these things? Basically, I've added a link here to the particular part in the SAP Help Portal that explains briefly what these things are. The EM name, okay, which is this thing here, which we're going to call emdev. The EM name, it says here, is mandatory, and it's unique for a sub-account. Basically, it's to do with how the service instances are managed in the background. So basically, if you're going to create an instance, give it an instance name, and also the EM name should be the same. Now, these other two things here that we've specified, the options, management true, messaging rest true, they specify that we want to be able to use the management API and the messaging API, the REST flavors, the HTTP-based flavors. Remember that the message bus, the enterprise messaging service, supports lots of different protocols. MQP, MQTT, proper hardcore messaging protocols. But it also supports, the most common application protocol in the world, HTTP, which is fantastic for us, right? So we want to be able to use HTTP to do the management API, but also the messaging API. And for those of you who have been on the stream in previous episodes, you'll know what those managing and messaging APIs are. Basically, the management API is for creating queues and sort of the administrative side of doing stuff. And the messaging API is for sending messages to topics, to queues, and all those sorts of things. We'll hopefully get to that later. So this basically just says that we want to be able to use the REST management and the REST messaging stuff. So I'm going to create an instance. There we go. Let's do that. In the meantime, let's go back to our second tab here. It's still starting. There's still an issue. So we'll do something off-piste. We'll do something exciting in the command line. We'll use the CLI. Exactly. As Helmut says, CLI friendly. We are CLI friendly on this channel, in this show, in this Hands on SAP Dev show. I'm going to have a piece of a biscuit while we're having this. Oh, service instance was created. You can view it on the service instances page. View instance. There we go. Come on, come on, come on. There we go. And is my face in the way? I think it should be okay. But just here we can see the plan dev, and it's created. Now, if we go to the description again, we can see after the setup of the service instance itself, we also want to create a service key. Why do we want to create a service key? Because we need credentials, and that's where we can get access to credentials to interact with the instance, with the message service instance. Okay. Where are we going to interact with that instance? Well, from command line tools, for example, using the REST APIs for management and messaging. So we want to create a service key. So in order to interact with the message bus, various components need to authenticate it with it. So the emitter component in our Keynote that used the API to emit an event message, as it says there, right? So in order to do that, it used information in the service key, but we haven't got a service key yet, so we're going to create one. There we go, create service key. There we go. Use that to create service key, and for convention, and also you'll see it in the scripts, I'm using SK1, service key 1 as a convention. Okay, we don't need to specify any parameters, so let's do that now. Service keys, there we go, create service key. I'm going to call it SK1, and I'm going to create it. I'm going to do this all again on the command line. Okay, so there we go, created service key 1. Now, if we have a look at the service key 1, woo, there we go, there is the service key 1. And it contains JSON with some credentials. That wasn't all the credentials that we saw. It contains JSON, so we can go in there and grab the credentials and use those to authenticate ourselves and make API calls to this particular instance. Okay, so that is basically the setup on the cockpit. But now we're going to do the same thing on the command line. Before we do that, let's just make sure we understand what we've created. What we've got here now is an instance of the enterprise messaging service with the dev plan. It's created, it's called emdev. We did specify those parameters that allowed us to use the messaging and the management APIs via HTTP, and we've got a service key. One final check, that's still being created. They got a technical issue. Okay, so let's abandon the business application studio for today. Okay, we'll do it in the command line. But this will also show us that really all we need is a command line. Okay, in the business application studio, the dev spaces give us a command line in the form of a bash shell, but let's use our own bash shell today. Why not? Okay, so here's a command line. I've got, am I up to date here on my local thing? Yes, okay, so we're already up to date. Okay, let's make it a little bit darker. There we go. Maybe 8. There, perfect. So let's have a look at what we've got. Let's go into our, where is it? Message bus directory. Yeah, there we go. Let's actually go there. What we've got in here is a couple of scripts, okay? A couple of scripts. One script, in fact, let's go back in here again. One script, and this is the README that we're following, okay? By the way, this is exactly the same thing as this, okay? So let's go out of here. So we've got these settings, okay? And I'm using the quite widely recognized from Google, the shell script style guide. So this anything ending .sh is a library, not to be executed directly, but to be loaded into other things. So I've got it's like a library of settings. So the service is enterprise messaging there, the plan is dev, the instance I want to create is emdev, and the service key is sk1. Now these things I'm going to use in this script here. Okay, so we're going to use this script in a minute to create the enterprise messaging service again. Okay, but before we create it again, we've got to remove it. So let's do that now. Let's quit out of there. CF login. I think I've already logged in actually. CF services. There we go. So there's our service that we've just created. Okay, emdev, and in fact CF service key. Show me the service keys. Let's do it in longhand. Service. Let's make that a little bit bigger as well. CF service keys. Is it service keys plural? emdev. Yeah, there's the service key sk1. Okay, so we can, let's remove that. I've got a little script which will remove the service keys of a service and then remove the service itself. Otherwise, you can't remove a service instance if there's a service key existing. So I'm just going to do DSI key, emdev, just remove that. So it'll first of all remove the service key. It'll find the service keys and remove those. And then it will remove the actual service instance itself. And now we're going to do the same thing again, but manually. Okay, so let's go back here. Set up on the command line. Okay. Using a script and manually. You can also run the CF commands manually. Here's a brief summary of what you need to do. There we go. CF create, there's that thing. Okay. So let's just run that. So all we're doing there is using the CF command line tool, CLI friendly, create service, specify the service name, specify the plan, specify what we want to call the instance, and then specify with the -C flag, with the -C option, the JSON. That's exactly the same JSON that we specified in the cockpit. Okay, so this is just another way of doing it. Oh, chat. Brilliant. Luis, good morning, Luis. Good morning. Good morning to you. Please could you create a playlist with this series, develop a keynote, and put it into the description. Has a great knowledge. Right, thank you for that request. In fact, yes, I should put it in the description. What I've got already, if I go to SAP Devs, there, you'll see only recently that there is now a playlist getting the most out of the SAP TechEd Developer Keynote repository. Okay, and that one's there. So this is the playlist. Let me just share that with you. There's the playlist. I will add it to the description as well. Okay, so yeah, as we do more episodes in this little sort of series, they'll appear in that playlist. So okay, that you sharing here in the future is more easy to review of topics. That is a key of good working on the integration between different platforms and services. And I say, thank you. Well, thank you, Luis, as well for the suggestion. Great suggestion. So I'll add it to each of the descriptions in the YouTube video. So there we go. Okay, cool. In fact, I should add it to the shows as well, shouldn't I? So that show, we've got a shows blog post. So I'll add it to there as well. The little series. Okay, perfect. Thank you for reminding me. I'll keep that there to remind me. Okay, so we've created that service instance, CFS. There we go. But we haven't yet got, I'm going to use ZCF because that truncates. I've got my little ZCF script for those who've been around for a while. I can do a ZCF service and that'll just use the truncation, work out how wide the screen is and truncate it so it's not ugly. But if I do a ZCF service key, service keys, emdev, show me the service keys, there are none. So now we can create a service key. By doing that, create service key, just like that. And now it's there, SK1. So we've done exactly the same thing as we did in the cockpit on the command line. And now if we go back, in fact, I should have shown you, I suppose we should have looked at the cockpit, but if we refresh that now, it's going to be the same because we've removed it and put it back again without changing this. So if I refresh now, biscuit. There we go. So there. Now, you know, obviously that could have been a trick. That's not changed, but it has changed because we removed it and put it back again. So, you know, you saw what we did, right? You like the settings of my command line? Thank you, Tanwa. What plugins are you? Well, from a plugin perspective, or let's call it a configuration perspective, I'm using all sorts of things. And if you're interested, let me just go to here. If you go to github.com qmacro, there. If you go to qmacro, let me share that, see there. And if we go to my repositories, you will see that I've got a repository called .files. And all the information as to how I set up my terminal and other things as well are in my .files. So have a look there. So I'm using a specific font, which is Victor Mono, which is brilliant font. I'm using all sorts of configuration for my bash prompt. So yeah, have a look. Let me know what you like and what you're doing as well. So we've got that set up now. Let's do one more thing. Let's remove it again. DSIK emdev. And once we've done that, deleting service instance and deleting the deleting service key and deleting service instance. There we go. Perfect. Now if we go back there, get rid of that, get rid of that. We can get rid of that. We can get rid of that as well. Go back here. Let's refresh that again. Of course, that's not there anymore. And that's not there. Okay, it's gone. So now finally, what we're going to do is we're going to set it up for a third time. So this hopefully will I'm sorry, I was just distracted. Ronnie, you've posted an emoji. I can't figure out what it is. Is it a person with a headache? What is that thing on his head? I can't tell. It's quite small. Let me know what that thing means and why you put that. But anyway, I'm sure it's brilliant as usual. So now let's just feel our way and set things up. You know, we've used the cockpit, which is great. We've used the command line manually, but the most powerful thing about the command line is you can automate things. You can put things in scripts, and this is what we're going to do now. Okay, and we've got a little script called service setup. Let's have a look at it here, right in the repo. Service setup using a script in the same directory as this message bus README here. There's that settings.sh and the script. We looked at them very briefly just now in the terminal. Let's just go there. This service setup script. Let's make it a little bit bigger. That's all it is. Oh, mine is blown. Ah, was it Andre Previn or somebody? That GIF. all this does is exactly what we've just done on the command line, maybe a little bit neater. And it also uses these settings in settings.sh to provide the variables. Emdev is the name of the instance, sk1 is the name of the key. So in fact, let's look at settings.sh. There's those settings. Ah, yes. Oh, I forgot actually to mention, if we go to here, where are we? Did I put there? Oh yeah, there we go. So using a script. So we've got the service set up. Tell you what, let me open that in a new window. Let's get rid of that for a second. There. The service setup script is this thing here, and it sources, it brings in the settings.sh script to bring in the names required, emdev, sk1, and so on. So in fact, let me open up the copy the link and open up that one in there so you can hopefully see. So there's the now in there we can see GitHub tells us this is actually not a real file. This is a pointer to a file in the directory above us called message bus settings, because I want to share these settings. Where is it? View code, message bus settings. There. I want to share these settings amongst different components. So I don't want them inside the message bus directory. I want them higher up so other things can point to them. Okay, so that's the service enterprise equals service equals enterprise messaging, plan equals dev, instance equals emdev, service key equals sk1. Okay, are we all still okay? Am I going too slow, too fast? Is this the sort of thing we want to look at? We just really enjoy creating this instance and understanding how we create it and what we're going to do with it. Comment from above. You are commenting here from CLI. Ah, yes. Yeah, I can. If you're interested, we'll go through that as well. On an off piste hands-on SAP dev. If you want to do that. What we're going to use is this service setup script to do the same. All it is, right? We're bringing in that settings file. We're specifying the parameters the JSON parameters, but I hate writing JSON by hand, so I write it in YAML because it's more beautiful, and then convert it with YQ to JSON on the fly. I make sure that we're logged in to CF, okay? And then I just use the same things: create service, enterprise messaging, emdev, plan dev, emdev name, and then the parameters, which are those things there, converted to JSON. We create the service key, and then we remove any existing file, which we'll sort of explain shortly. So let's do that now as well in our thing. So CFS, no services, nothing up our sleeve. So now, if we run, in fact, settings, there's the settings there, and if we run service setup, oops, that's just the left arrow thing there. Service setup, what it's doing is all those things. Come on. Is it doing that? There we go. Creating service instance emdev in org. So these are just the things we did manually to the command line, but look at the power of scriptability. It's just fantastic. Okay, it's done. So now the services, there it is, and ZCF, SKA, service keys, emdev. It's there. Okay, so basically we've set up the message bus. We've set up what we want to set up, okay, which is this thing. Now, let's get rid of that and rid of that. Now, I've deliberately sort of gone a little bit fast. Thank you, Pankaj, for confirming. I always appreciate people letting me know. Thank you, Pankaj. Really appreciate it. So I was sort of deliberately going fast there because I want to have. I'm looking over here because that's where my clock is. My time. What time is it? So it's 8:35. So we've got 25 minutes to start kicking the tires and maybe getting a little bit more familiar or refamiliarizing ourselves with what the enterprise messaging service is all about and what it offers. Okay. Now, in order to do that, there is another repo. Okay. Those regulars will remember cloud messaging hands-on speed, that we've got a repo. Let's just share that from earlier episodes, well, from earlier a little series that we had on hands-on SAP Dev last year, where we dug into the enterprise messaging service, and we got a repo with all cool stuff that we all created together, right? So here's the repo. There's a ton of stuff in it. There's a little setup script here that is very, very similar to the one we've been just using for the App Studio. Installs YQ, JQ, and the URL decode features. And what that repo has is a couple of scripts that are interesting to us: a management script and a messaging script. And those two scripts are sort of respectively scripts that allow us to interact with the management API and the messaging API. So why don't we kick the tires a little bit and just have a feel for the sorts of things, entities, artifacts that are related to messaging with the enterprise messaging service. I'm talking about things like topics, queues, subscriptions, things like that. So Helmut says, I prefer writing scripts with Deno. Not as good as you in Bash scripts. I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are. Yeah, write scripts however you like. I mean, I love Bash because it's very powerful. It's very stable. It's very portable. It's everywhere. And also, you know, it's the shell. Okay, so you write commands, and it's like being in a REPL of the language that you write your scripts in. Anyway, that's another story. So why don't we now go to here's a little script. It's not really even a script. I've got a little CG thing here which will show me the local copies of repos I've got in different sort of GitHubs and things. So cloud messaging hands-on SAP Dev. Let's go there. Right. Okay, we're there. Now, that is exactly this repo here. So let's have a quick look at it. Here is the management script. So the management script, as you can see here, it brings in the settings. It brings in some local utilities, and the functions in that local utilities is get service key. This is where we access the information in the service key in order to be able to authenticate to call an API endpoint in the management API. Okay, and also if you look, I hope, somewhere in here, somewhere in here, I can't find it, but somewhere in here, there's a link to the SAP Help Portal pages that explain the management APIs and the messaging APIs. So have a look at that. But basically, if we see we've got a management script, we've got a messaging script, and each of those rely on some, functions that I've put separated out into a little library here, management.sh and messaging.sh. Okay, and we've also got this listen. So let's play around with these APIs just to feel and kick the tires of the enterprise messaging service instance that we've just created. So if we run management, we can see that it offers us these different commands. And these commands relate directly to the API endpoints in the management API for enterprise messaging. The way that this works is that we've got a function called getServiceKey, which some people might remember, that goes and grabs information from the service key and it caches the service key, so it's not making a CF call every time. So this is like a cached version of go and get me the service key information. So that's this thing here, and what it does is it caches it in a file called sk-emdev sk1 in this case. So sk-instance name -service key name. So this is the reason why it's important to be consistent with your names, and it gets those names from the settings file. There we go. Okay, so if we say management list queues, what it's going to do is it's a bit of a delay because it knows that service key cache file is out of date. So first of all, it goes and gets the service key, grabs the information from it, and then uses it to authenticate and makes a call to the management API, the list queues endpoint. Okay. So that, in fact, yeah, so there you go. And they've got no queues. Okay. Now, what are we looking at? Let's just briefly go to, where's the browser? There we go. Let's briefly go to, let's have a full screen. Let's refresh to the dashboard. Okay. Because let's see this sort of, from a graphical perspective first, just to make sure we're all on the same page, and then go back to, real life on the command line. So here we go. Here's the enterprise messaging instance. If we click here, we can see view dashboard. Okay, we'll sign on. And we can see this very simple dashboard, which will show us queues, no queues there. Queue subscriptions, well, obviously there's no queue subscriptions if there's no queues. There's no webhook subscriptions. These are all the different artifacts, the different things, right? So there's nothing there. So let's go back to queues. Let's just put the auto refresh update on there. Let's go back to here. And so there's no, so the equivalent of this empty result here is the, empty list in, where is it? In fact, let's move that there. There we go. What? I thought I could move Brave browser. There, in there, sorry. All my keys mixed up. So yeah, that empty list there is the exact same as that empty list there. So we're going to create a queue. Let's create a queue. So management create queue, what's the command? Management create or update queue, because the API endpoint for queue creation is the same as the queue update. Basically, it's like a idempotent thing. Bang, bang, bang. Create it, update it, create it, update it. So we'll say management create update queue, and the way I've written the script is that it will tell you what you need if you don't supply it. So you need a queue name, right? So let's call it hands on SAP dev. Okay, so it's created a queue. It's used the management API, and it's used the credentials in our service key to authenticate the call to the management API endpoint. The API endpoint it's called is the one that will create or update a queue. And here's the result. It's JSON. Okay, so let's flip back, and there it is. There's the hands on SAP dev queue, right? And now if we do a list queues, we'll see that it's not an empty list anymore, open square brackets, close square brackets. It's a list of one thing, one queue. Okay, so we can start to get the feel for that sort of thing. Now, if we look at the messaging script, these two scripts are scripts that we sort of created together in a previous sort of, series. And these scripts are all available in here. There they are, management messaging. So have at them, fork this repo, clone it, whatever. You don't need to fork this one because you don't need to create any sort of artifacts relating to this particular thing. So just clone it. That's fine. Hello, good morning, Sunguk. Welcome. Thanks for joining. So now what we'll do is we'll use this listen script. Okay, this listen script is sort of doing a lot of the stuff that we're going to be doing in the next episodes when we're diving into the Developer Keynote repository, relating to how, for example, the charity component on the ABAP stack creates a webhook and starts listening, subscribes that webhook to a topic to listen for incoming messages. Remember how it happened in the Keynote, Developer Keynote? This listen script, which is this one here, let me just share that as well, just specifically, because it's quite an interesting script, I think. This listen script, okay, will do the following. It'll create a queue, a temporary queue. It'll subscribe that queue to the topic that we specify. It will start a webhook endpoint, which we'll talk about shortly. It will subscribe that webhook, as in create a webhook subscription point into that webhook endpoint, subscribe that to the queue, and then start monitoring the output of that webhook. So remember, we've got queues, okay, which are basically, where messages are. Messages are sent through queues, and messages are received through queues. But this is a concept of a topic as well, okay? And this is super important when it comes to thinking about extending S4HANA Cloud, for example, okay? We saw in the developed Keynote that we emitted a message for a certain topic, a sales order created topic, right? So we'll come to that in a subsequent episode. So we think about topics, and topics are just ephemeral. They don't really exist as a thing. They're a sort of ephemeral, but in order to make them real, make them usable, you subscribe a queue to a topic saying, I would like to listen to that topic, and I would like to get messages that are pushed to that topic, that are published to that topic. So I'm going to create a queue and connect it, as it were, to that topic. So all the messages that are published to that topic come down the queue to me, okay? But how do you get that? How do you get that stuff? You create an endpoint. For example, we're using HTTP, but of course, you can use AMQP and MQTT, but we're using, and this is what we did with the charity component, the ABAP stack. There's an endpoint, an HTTP endpoint that post requests can be sent to, and that endpoint, that webhook, was subscribed to the queue. Okay, so there's lots of connections. Does that make sense? Let me know if that makes sense. And if you want, go back and watch the other diving into messaging on the Hands-on SAP Dev show. So that's what it does. And then once we hit Control-C to end the script, it'll delete the webhook subscription. It'll just clean up after itself. Now, we've got a little webhook here. So let's have a look here. We've got a little webhook, not written in Dino, Helmut, but written in Node. Because why not, right? There's a little webhook. You may have seen this before. It just uses Express, which is an HTTP server library. Okay. So I am going to go into, in fact, let's just open up a TMUX session. I'm going to go into the webhook and list it there. All it is, npm run, npm start, I think. npm start. Let's have a look, actually. Package.lock. npm start, node index.js, perfect. npm start. Okay, server running on port 8080. Okay, we can now make calls to it. And of course, our webhook, only really makes sense in the context of a post request. So all we've done here, all I've done is configure it to say if we get a GET request, just respond by saying, hey, send me a post request. Okay, so it's all ready for receiving a post request. Now, that's just listening on localhost. So instead what we'll do, cf push webhook, let's call it webhook hands-on SAP Dev. Let's push that to our Cloud Foundry runtime and get that to listen. And then we can subscribe that publicly available endpoint to a queue, okay? And we'll use the listen for that. Well, thank you, Sunguk. I'm glad you found the channel. I'm glad you found us. I'm glad we found you. And welcome again. It's not every morning. It's not just me. I've got some colleagues as well who do premieres and live streams. For example, Tom Young and Marius Obert and people like that, and Kevin Musik, or my developer advocate colleagues. I stream regularly on Friday mornings at this time, 8 AM UK. But just check out the SAP Devs channel. In fact, SAP Devs, let me put the channel there. Well, I'm sure if you found it, I guess you know where it is, right? So there's the channel. Okay, so we've got an app running now. We've got the webhook. So now, if we say that there, we should be able to go. Same thing, right? So that's good. Now let's get rid of that. Get rid of that. We don't really need that anymore. We don't need that anymore. So now, why don't we run the listen script? Go back up again. The listen script requires us to specify a topic and the app name, which is webhook hands-on SAP Dev. So let's do that. So listen. Give me a topic name. Shortbread. Shortbread and webhook hands-on SAP dev. So what that's going to do is to create a temporary queue. When I say a temporary queue, as in it creates a queue that we're going to delete later, right? So it doesn't matter about the name. All I do is just get the epoch number of seconds since, you know, Unix epoch. Just append that to the queue name. Now, if we have a look now, where is it? There's a queue. Okay, there's our hands-on SAP dev queue that created, but there is our queue. Is that the one, 0252? Yes, it is, 0252, there. And also, this listen script has subscribed that queue to the topic shortbread. So let's have a look at that. Queue subscriptions. Let's just refresh that. Come on. Queue subscriptions. Let's just refresh that. Come on. Queue subscriptions. What? Queue subscriptions. What? Did it work? Oh, ha. It was subscribed, but then there was an error. Why don't you tell me? URL. Oh yes, of course. npm install global. Now that's described. I just added it actually. In here. There we go. npm package URL decode encode CLI. So if you look at App Studio setup script, you'll see that it does that. npm. Let's run that now. npm install. Bang. Let's run that on the top of the page. That provides us with, oh, thank you very much, npm. That provides us with a couple of command line tools. URL encode, hello space world, enter, and then it'll encode it to be URL compatible. So now we can run that again. Let's create another queue. Let's do it again. Listen where we are. Shortbread, blah, blah, blah. Let's eat some shortbread while it does that. Okay, so it's created another queue. And of course the name is different because the epoch number of seconds is different now, which is cool. Oh, what? Max Twyfinator in the house. Welcome, Max. Our old friend from the early days of live streaming. Welcome, Max. Welcome, everybody. So now we've created this queue. We've attached, we subscribed that queue. Where does it say that? We subscribed that queue to the topic shortbread, and we've also attached the endpoint, the webhook endpoint. We subscribed that to that queue. Okay, so we've attached all these different things together. Let's have a look at that on the thing here. So there's that queue that we sort of, was half broke. Let's delete it with the thing. Why not? Yeah, gone. So there's that queue, 378. If we now look at queue subscriptions, that 378 queue is subscribed to the topic name shortbread. Okay, let's keep that on refresh as well. And we've also got a webhook subscription, which again is a throwaway thing. We've created a subscription called WHS, and then the same thing, 378, and we've subscribed that webhook to there. In fact, if we have a look at it, there we can see the URL of the webhook is our lovely endpoint. So now all we need to do to complete the sort of the tire kicking, we can see it. In fact, there we saw it with when I just requested that. Then where was it? There. Bang. Refresh. As in request. There we go. That's that. So now let's open up another window, another pane, technically speaking, before Helmut and others correct me. Ronnie, do you use tmux? Does anybody use tmux here? It's awesome. Anyway, we've got now, let's just say this out loud and then do something. We've got a queue. We've subscribed that queue to the topic shortbread. And we've also got a webhook endpoint, which is running on in my Cloud Foundry runtime, that is listening for incoming post requests and get requests, but post requests mostly, right? To receive messages, because we've just subscribed that webhook to the queue. So all we need to do now is do what basically the emitter component in the developer Keynote repository is going to be doing. We're going to do that next, I think. Or maybe next after next, I don't know. Let's create a message. Let's publish a message, an event message, to the message bus, to the topic shortbread. So we used the management script to create the queue and to create the queue subscription and to create the webhook subscription. Those are all sort of, administrative things, right? So now we're going to be using the messaging API. And remember, when we set up the instance, we specify those parameters to say, I'd like to be able to use the HTTP, the REST version of the API, rather than MQP or MQTT, because we do it on the command line now. So as you can see here, let's just bring that one down there. As you can see, you can do all sorts of things. And again, all these commands here that we got in the messaging script, they reflect directly all the different endpoints in the messaging API of cloud, SAP Enterprise Messaging Service. So let's try one. Messaging, publish message to topic. You can publish directly to a queue, but when we're thinking in terms of extending, for example, S/4HANA Cloud, and what we did in the developer Keynote, it's all about topics. Remember on the API Business Hub, I said it the right way around this time, we looked at all the different message definitions, like the sales order created and all those different cool things. Helmut, Helmut, I knew you were a Teamworks user, yeah. So publish message to topic. What do we need there? Because it's going to tell us, right? Publish message to topic, name and message. I've got some in the script. I need to fix that because I think it does something before realizing it hasn't got all the parameters. That's why it's a bit of a delay. So I need to sort of improve that a little bit. Thank you, Helmut. Thank you. I mean, the scripting is so powerful, isn't it? So we need a name. What topic name? So publish message to topic, shortbread, and the message, hello world. Why not? Okay, are we ready? Are we ready? We should. So what's going to happen is that, get rid of that, get rid of that. We are going to see, or we're going to publish a message to the shortbread topic. And because we've got a queue that's subscribed to that shortbread topic, that message is going to be sent to that queue. And because we've got a webhook subscription to that queue, as in we've connected an endpoint, our endpoint that we're in control of, the one that's in on Cloud Foundry, right? Just a little webhook, Express-based endpoint. And the equivalent in the developer Keynote is, of course, the webhook endpoint in the ABAP stack that Rich created in the charity component. Because that's all connected, we should see something come up in the top. Come on, come on, come on. There we go. So, do we all get that? The message, hello world, was published to the topic shortbread. That message found its way to that queue because of the queue subscription to the topic shortbread. Because we have this webhook subscription, as in the webhook endpoint is subscribed to that queue, the enterprise messaging service instance sends the message down, makes a post request to that endpoint and says, here's a message, ta-da! And there's the message. So that's it. It's 9 o'clock. My goodness me. Thank you very much for joining. That's it. In the next episode of this little series, we'll start. What are we going to look at? We're going to start to look at. Go to the quick start. We're going to look at. Oh, the sandbox. Yes, the sandbox. Yep. Unless, let me know in the comments of this video or on Twitter, whatever, doesn't matter, if you prefer to do the emitter next or the sandbox next. Either is okay. Okay, let me know. And thanks so much for joining. Have a great Friday. Stay safe. Have a great weekend. And I'll see you next week. Bye for now.